Hello, I would like to introduce the incoming Newton City Manager, Daniela Lujano Rivas, and Emporia City Manager, Trey Cocking. How are you both doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing very well. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to participate in my public manager and community engagement project. Beginning with my first question, I'll have Daniela answer first and then Trey. What were some of the reasons you chose to follow the public service path?
Sure, I'll go first. And Emily, I know that you know this, but I'm gonna maybe go into a little story. When I was a kid, as a child of immigrants who didn't speak English, I became the family interpreter. That kind of thrusted me into the adult life pretty young. So I was going to doctor's appointments and to legal appointments and translating documents. But I think that planted a seed in me, and that seed was wanting to help my family and wanting to help the people around me. Um, I learned how to express myself at a young age. I learned how to defend my family and defend myself. I also learned I, I I was given the opportunity to be a part of events and opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have. Also, I got to see things from different perspectives. So I think that planted a seed for public service. So I my first job was in a county, and I was partnered up with a mentor. That mentor introduced to me the city manager path, which I fell in love with. So I think everyone has lots of motivation as to why they start in public service, but staying in public service, I think, is also very important. And for me, it's the people that I work with, the people that I've gotten to know, and knowing that when I leave a city, I leave it in a little bit better off than it originally was. So,
Thank you. Okay, Trey, your turn.
Sure. I think I've always been interested in public service. Growing up, my dad was a police officer, so that's sort of service above self was ingrained at a young age. Went to college, and I think I was interested in law enforcement, interested in public administration. Kind of went down the public administration path because I kind of thought that's where I could make a maybe a larger difference doing that. I was fortunate enough, went to grad school in public administration. And, probably I guess the story that I'll tell real quick is worked in the Citrus County Manager's office, really enjoyed it. Then that year came up and kind of had to get a job. Apply for jobs at a bunch of different places. And the first job I got hired at was as a budget analyst in the governor's budget office for the state of Kansas. Um, Going from city government or county government to state government was a huge change of pace. State government moves much slower by design than local government.
mm,
Very much geared around the legislative session. So after the first year of being a budget analyst, I was kind of bored, wasn't loving my work. I had a friend who worked for the league at the time, and I went to lunch with him, and they had a job open at the time, which was like a workers' comp insurance person. And, I went to lunch with him because I was going to ask about that job. And we went out to lunch, and, I was 26 at the time. And, Larry's talking to me, you don't want that job at the league. Well, I, want to be in Topeka, whatever. He's like, what do you want to do, Trey? I was like, well, I want to be a city manager. Go be a city manager. I'm like, I'm 26. I don't have any experience. I've never done this. I've only been a budget analyst for a year. Trey, go be a city manager.
yeah.
And, you know, we talked, and, he's like, Cherryvale, Kansas, and Greensburg, Kansas. Greensburg was pre tornado, are both hiring right now. Go back and apply for one of them. I went home and talked to my wife that night, and, we'd only been married for, a little over, a little over 2 years. And it's like, well, this is going to be, should I do this? Am I going to get hired? I don't think I'm going to get hired. Ended up taking the leap, applying for the job. Ended up getting hired on a 3-2 vote. and then kind of off and running from there. But, as much as hard as that first job was, and Danielle has done time in a small town in Southeast Kansas, it's a hard job. But I think the on the job learning, um, I, probably bar none, best experience I've had.
Good. On to the second question. What did your prior education cover regarding local government and community engagement?
So I attended Wichita State. I got my undergrad at in the Barton School of Business, and my MPA is from Hugo Wall School of Public Affairs. I followed the finance and management emphasis because that's what my undergrad was in. So my study centered around public finance and city and county government. They actually have certificates in those areas. So I took that path. My coursework, if you will, specifically covered local government administration. So it was heavy on the local government admin side. We did a lot of case study, a lot of theory. I even field experience. I interned with the city for a semester. I also took a lot of budgeting classes, best practices, how to execute a budget, how to create a budget. Also technical analysis. So if you didn't have that finance background or that accounting background, you actually did some technical analysis, you put a budget together, you presented it. So I would say that my coursework did prepare me for a lot of that base knowledge that I needed. But the reality of going into a small city and into a bigger city is that I think the best experience, like Trey said, is actually being in the city and tackling those opportunities and those obstacles as they come. Also through support through the league, Trey's organization he was at for a long time, and ICMA, KCM, GFOA, all these acronyms are just organizations that have the training and support that I've needed over the last 15 years that I've been in local government. Yeah.
Great. How about you, Trey?
I ended up at a different MPA program. It's actually MPSA program, but I ended up at Texas A&M, and it's the George Bush School of Government. With the first President Bush, it's there with his library. When I attended in 2002, President Bush was 79, 80. He was very active on campus. He would come and sit in our classes. Coolest experience of my life. Happened multiple times, but you're sitting there in class. All of a sudden, a Secret Service agent would walk into the classroom. He would stand there for a while. He'd lift up his arm. He'd kind of whisper into his arm. And then pretty soon, the former president and usually his dog would come in and sit in the back of class and, kind of wait for the professor to ask the first question. And he would answer it.
Wow.
Which, was always tremendous to hear, hear President Bush's engagement. But it definitely wasn't community engagement. It was definitely at not even going to say at the 30,000 foot level, really at the space level, satellite level, looking down. And I would say, I loved my MPA program, what we got to do, but it was really heavy policy. And I would almost say more aimed at the federal bureaucracy than local government. So not tons of community engagement at that point, just because that's not how that program was structured. Now, I mentioned I graduated, didn't know what to do at that point, and ended up applying for a full-time internship. It was a full-time paid internship with Sedgwick County for a year, and ended up working for Bill Buchanan, who was a former ICMA vice president at the time, and ended up serving as the ICMA president a couple years later. But probably where I got my hands dirty on community engagement more than anything was in 2004. Sedgwick County put the downtown arena, the Interest Arena project on the ballot. So we went out and I got to learn everything from community engagement, community meetings to, I really got an insight into how the newspaper industry worked and how the media industry worked, just as we worked through that process and ended up taking that ballot to getting passed getting passed by the voters. And then, we all celebrated, hey, we got it passed. And then, well, the way Kansas works, we had to turn around and we had to go get that legislatively blessed. So we had to, basically do engagement with the legislators to turn around and get that 1 cent sales tax blessed by them before it could become effective. But I would say that 1 year internship was really, and working on that arena projects where I really learned, I guess, the nuts and bolts of community engagement and what worked and what didn't work.
Well, that's quite a story, getting
No.
to semi-meet former President George Bush. That's awesome.
Yeah, tremendous experience and something that I definitely will stick with me for the rest of my life.
Okay, next question. I've noticed both of you have made efforts to engage the public within the city manager's office. What are you both hoping to accomplish? And what would you say are the best approaches to get the community engaged?
So the biggest project I here at the city of McPherson, since I haven't transitioned to Newton yet, I actually was hired in a new position. So the assistant city administrator position had gone away, and community trust had suffered because of COVID and because of a lot of things. So I was hired to implement our strategic plan. So when I started here, I hit the ground running, and we started the strategic planning process because the city didn't have one. So my entire purpose in the beginning was to engage our residents internally, also staff, and oversee the implementation of a strategic plan. So I, on a day-to-day basis, proactively connect our objectives to everything that we do, from our department heads on all the way down. We have 12 strategic objectives, and those are repeated in every way, shape, or form we can remind our staff and our residents. One of those objectives is engagement, is improving engagement inside and out of our organization. So the success of my position and actually our city as a whole is based on whether or not we're moving the bar on that strategic plan. So for engagement, I'm going to read off our intended outcomes. So these are the things that we look for and we work on every day for improving engagement here in McPherson. So we want to increase collaboration with residents. And there are lots of ways we do that. We have more meaningful communication. So taking the time to actually meet with people and having those conversations, improve satisfaction, and increase community trust. So internally, when we can clarify the connection between staff and what it is that they're doing, we find that people become more engaged. They do better work. They see their value in the organization. So that has been my purpose. Externally, we know that building trust in our community will contribute to the success of our plan. So, and we're slowly starting to see a turn. And it's been, so the process started shortly before I started here, so it's been a couple of years, but we're starting to see that turn. We see more people showing up to our community events. We see more feedback on our surveys. We see more public participation. And that has been because we've taken a very proactive approach in this process, in this plan, because we said we're gonna do it right, and we're gonna put all our chips in. So what it has created is that extra time and extra effort, and those relationships that we've built have created success within our city. It's invited people to come and open businesses here. Our school is looking at ways at doing other things. Our sister organizations, like our museum and our rec center and stuff, those organizations have also see more people participating in those more people are going to the gym and more people are going to our museum. People are coming here for events. And so that has created a need for more staffing and more ingenuity in the way we do things, because we don't have unlimited resources. So I think it's created a little bit of a problem for us, but it's a good problem. So that is kind of the effort that we've taken on these last few years in the administrator's office.
Good. How about you, Trey?
So when I started, Emporia had basically had I don't want to say ignore the community, because I think there are a lot of one-on-one relationships that were done out there. But as far as the social media community, we really didn't engage. We had our Facebook page set up where you can filter up to 1,000 words. And if you used any of those words, your comment would not show up on the Facebook page. So words such as the, city,
Yeah.
just almost any common word was filtered out. So if anybody wrote anything, it wasn't showing up on our Facebook page. So obviously that wasn't the place to be. So one of my first big hires was to hire a communications manager for the city, to be able to respond, to be able to engage community members. And where we've had a lot of success, at least, we've only been doing it for a year and a half, changing that ship, is where, number one, and not, we get people with fake profiles. That's a little harder to engage than people, with real profiles on Facebook. But our communications manager has been really great at trying to reach out individually to some of these, I'm going to call them gunners online. Reach out with that information individually, cultivate them. In some places, we've got them to apply for city boards and become part of the process, which I think has been very powerful to do that. But we've had some people who, at least when we started really working on Facebook, who were some of our biggest naysayers, are quite positive about the city now. And when somebody writes something negative, at times there's some of the folks to go out and to kind of counter some of that with facts. So I think just being there, engaging, having those real engagements, and trying, I always say, for both sides. I think when people just see somebody as somebody on the other side of the keyboard, it is easy to forget that we're real people, both at the city level and both on the other side of the keyboard. We are actual people, and I've been around this. I would say 99.9% of people are really trying to do the right thing in their life, the right thing for the community, and don't really have evil in their heart, but they're just trying to understand. And if you can go out, if you can engage them, you can be successful. Not the case with everybody, but with the vast majority, you can get out, engage them. And one of the next initiatives we're working on, probably after the first of the year, is we still have a good group of naysayers. I think we're going to invite them to a pizza party, see how many of them we can get to come in all at once, and be able to frankly answer some of their questions, but answer it in person and not across the keyboard.
Good.
Good one.
Okay, this question is for Trey. Why did you feel like you needed to start Meet the Manager meetings in Emporia, Kansas?
So this is, I came from a city of 2,300, then to Atchison, a city of 11,000, now to a city of almost 25,000. When you're in that small city, you do just tons of personal engagement, whether it's walking into the hardware store, whether it's, going to the grocery store, whatever it is, you have conversations on a daily basis. When you get into a city this size, you blend in a little bit more than you did, especially in those small cities where I was used to having that dialogue on a constant basis. If we were cooking dinner and if we were short on something, I remember having those conversations with my wife, especially in Cherryville, was, hey, do you want to run to the store? Or do you want me to run to the store? my wife would be like, I'll run to the store, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Because if you run to the store, there's a chance you won't be back for an hour, which,
Yeah.
was very true.
Mhm.
But in Emporium, especially new, it's a little bit harder to create those relationships. So I think we wanted to go to places maybe where there's already folks there, have conversations with people, and at least let them know I'm here. Um, we want, staff level. We really want to actively solve problems, and if we can't solve problems, we want you to know why we can't solve that problem. Either it's because of a lack of resources, or it's a state federal thing, or it's unfortunately it's a private party matter. But we want the folks to have the why, and not just the what's not just the simple no yes answer. So I think that sort of engagement is very important to me, to get out to talk to people, find those opportunities. And now that I've been here for 2 years, I think just walking around, I'm getting a little bit more of that opportunity. But it's been just being in a bigger city, it takes a little bit longer to get to where people recognize you than in a small city.
Thank you. This question is for Daniela. Why did you feel like you needed to engage the community, such as with the city budget and implementation of new codes?
Um, I my role before I entered into city management was finance director. So, uh, it, in my finance with my finance director hat on, and as a city administrator, I believe it's just my responsibility as a public servant and a steward of public monies to implement good practices, and those practices include engaging the public because it is their money. These practices have helped staff internally, our elected officials, um, become more accountable because they are now responsive to the community we serve because it's all out there. Also, by creating that transparency and that engaging the public. Um, they see that we value them. They see that we value their opinion and what they have to say. So that inclusive part of budgeting has really worked well for us. We have seen it. We've seen the success through, again, people, residents coming to our budget meetings, responding on social media. Like Trey said, not all comments on social media are good, but we definitely have an uptick in the amount of responses that we're getting, which is a good thing. But I would equate the success that we've been having all to that word of called transparency. So we try to be as transparent as possible because the transparency, I think, builds our credibility. And like Trey said, when you put yourself out there, which Trey does, I think, weekly, people begin to see you for who you are. They may not see you as, that, the city administrator or the finance director or, the elected official. They see you as a person. And when they can connect with you on that level, that trust begins to that you plant a seed and that trust grows. That also taking the time to make that purposeful engagement with them, it shows them that you care. I mean, it's not just your job. You really care, that they understand what the mill levy is and why you're increasing it. And when they hear it from you, especially on a one-on-one basis, which we do all the time, it really does foster those relationships. So I know it takes a lot of time. I know it takes a lot of effort. I'm sure Trey has a lot of things to do on top of his weekly efforts with those one-on-ones, but we've definitely see the fruit of that labor here in our community.
Thank you.
Mm.
All right, let's switch things around now, and we'll have Trey answer the remainder of the questions first, and then Daniela. Do you think you're doing enough to get the public involved and are employees resistant to it?
Say no. I think there's always ways to be more engaged with the community. I think the employees have responded. I really, Axios had a piece yesterday that when employees work for a mission-driven organization, they are more happy at work. So, really that we are here to serve our citizens, that we're here to serve our neighbors, and we're here to make their lives better. And creating that sense of mission-driven experience for our employees, I think is a good thing. And I think as long as we keep talking about our mission, as long as we keep on talking about serving our neighbors, I think that resonates very powerful with our employees. Because at the end of the day, they could go work at any manufacturer, but we really want our employees to have a sense of identity that they're out serving, serving their community and trying to make things better.
Thank you. All right, Daniela.
I echo what Trey said, actually. I think we do a good job. I mean, we really do try, but we can always do more. What we've unfortunately suffered here in McPherson is being understaffed. Engagement takes time, like I mentioned, and sometimes, like for example, in the budget process, sometimes and this has happened actually this year with we've had a lot of turnover, and that engagement piece sometimes is a let's check that box and keep going. But in my role, it's been it's me taking the time to say, hey, we can't check that box, because our mission is, and I'm gonna read my little sticky note, because we just created this. Like I said, we went through the strategic planning process, but our mission is serving people today for a better tomorrow. So we can't do that if we're not engaging our citizens. Our vision is a community everyone could call home. So there are a lot of moving parts, but we do let me give you an example about the budget process. Like, we start early in the year, and I don't know when Trey starts, but it's constantly, as soon as you get it adopted, you're already starting on the next year. So we put out a calendar so people know when we're meeting. We put out reports in an easy to read manner. We do we try to do pictures with numbers, so you're not just reading a financial report. I'm sure Trey does a PAFR or a year in review. I know our police department and fire department do like a year in review with pictures and stuff. So we publish our public meetings on software called Board Docs. It's Diligent software. It's real time. Everything that we get, a resident can get, and you can get it at any time. And it's filed by department. So the technology allows you, it creates that transparency, because if someone is reading something off in a televised commission meeting, you can go to that website and obtain every single document that's being talked about. So I think we do a good job of engaging, but just like Trey said, we could always do more. And we currently are working on doing more.
Thank you. Next question. According to a study by Gallup and Pew Research Center, there has been a decline in public trust since the 1970s. What do you think is causing the decline?
Yeah. I'm going to say it's the nationalization of media. What happened in the early 70s, Watergate, from FDR's election through World War II into the Eisenhower presidency, to the Kennedy presidency, we had really built a huge government trust. Government went out and did big things, solved the Great Depression, won World War II, built the interstate highway system under Eisenhower, constantly making lives better throughout that project. And then, really with the Johnson administration and the Nixon administration, we hit this quagmire in Vietnam, and then we see the ugly side of politics, and Nixon's resignation. And I think that's where the population really had, government's not, people in government, that's the first time I think they saw it, at least at the national level. Maybe people are out to benefit themselves just instead of the noble nature of public service. And then Ronald Reagan came in, and I think he doubled down on stuff with waste, fraud, and abuse. Am I going to say that there's no waste, fraud, and abuse in government? Absolutely not. But I think people grabbed onto this idea that government's just wasting money. And if we can just get rid of that government fraud and abuse, our taxes will be cut in half. And that notion is absolutely not true. And, we keep on trying to say taxes equal services because that gives us more money to go out and do things. But unfortunately, that's been caught on. And then, I'm not going to, really the last 8 years of toxic politics at the federal level has just made things worse. There's less trust in institutions. Institutions are wrestling at the bare knuckle level. But I think it's our job. I think it's definitely what Daniela has done in McPherson, and I can't wait to see what she does in Newton. But it's our job to show that local government works. There's not a Democrat way, there's not a Republican way to fill a pothole. It's just something we have to go out and do. So that's where I think local government, I think anytime you look at ranking of governments, local government's always where there's the most trust.
Yeah.
That's been endangered. But I think it's our job to go out, deliver services in a transparent manner, and make a difference in folks' life where we can rebuild that government trust.
Good.